Hello and welcome to Modular Content Insights, Launch, Create, and Experiment. I'm Yulia Sadzka, Head of Public Relations at Viseven. I will be your host and moderator today. Joining me are Nataliya Andreychuk, CEO of Viseven, Fabienne Vanderpoel, Senior Director, Global Head Content Management Excellence at Merck, and Emma Hyland, VP Strategy Commercial Content at Veeva. Expect to hear a lot of great insights and interesting information, but I would like each of our speakers to briefly introduce themselves. Emma, let's start off with you.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everybody. So Emma Hyland, that's me, as it said on the slide. I work for Veeva, and I have done for over 7 years. And what we do is provide the industry cloud for the life sciences industry. And specifically, my role is focused on commercial content. So I work in our strategy team. I'm responsible for thinking about our solutions that help the industry to be able to deliver content faster, compliantly, and at scale. So, and having worked for many years, partnering closely with Fabienne and Nataliya, delighted to be here today to talk about what we're doing and really, the future and what's coming next.
Emma, thank you so much for that intro. Fabienne, can you briefly tell us about yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. So Fabienne Vanderpoel is indeed my name, working for Merck Healthcare KGaA for about 23 years now, and having gone through indeed different roles on the business side, global, regional, or locally. One thing that is really close to my heart is marketing and getting it right. And here lately, of course, by then driving the content management excellence and the content management excellence team within the organization, it's really there also to get it right. And as you were saying before, on indeed how to create, how to localize, how to approve our new modular content in the future, also what marketing can be.
Thanks so much, Fabienne, for that intro. And Nataliya, last but not least, the CEO of Viseven, please introduce yourself a tad bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nataliya Andreychuk. I'm CEO of Viseven company. I'm also one of co-founders with Viseven more than 15 years already. So it's from ideation to the start. In Viseven, we have a privilege to work with content and to be this fuel to wire this omni-channel transformation of content across different cycles of its life cycle, right? So then it is very important to be here and as a vendor, as an agency, to understand what industry needs, to be able to fulfill those needs and to be able really to develop them at the edge of modern technologies. Thank you very much for connecting here.
Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourself. Now that we know our speakers a tad bit more, I would like to talk a little bit about our agenda for the day. We are going to talk about modular content as we stand in 2023, but we're also going to address change management practices and best tactics. Not to miss the agency's role. I think that's an important topic to address. And of course, the future of modular content. I think both Emma and Fabienne touched on that a little bit. We're also going to have a Q&A section towards the end of the webinar. So make sure to submit your questions as we go along. If you hear something that is of interest to yourself, please submit your questions. We will try to do our best to get to them towards the end of the webinar. So kicking things off with modular content, let me bring up a slide here and sort of have the idea of what a module is and what it looks like and sort of kick things off there. Just one moment. My Zoom is acting up today. Excellent. So a module is a piece of standalone content that has context and a meaning. It addresses an audience need and is MLR approvable. It has associated business rules and metadata for discovery. Thus, a module is a piece of content which is, if taken out of its current context and put into another, would still be correct and compliant. Emma, you're going to be the first person I address here. Let's talk about modular content. What is it based on this present slide and our present view of it as we are today in pharma?
Well, I love that you've shown this example here because often when people think about modular content, they're taking outside of life sciences experience, which are important, and we should all learn from, and trying to apply it. But what you're showing here is exactly the challenge and the opportunity that we have with modular content in our industry. And that's because there's a lot of information around claims and how that's managed, and the text and the graphs and the data, and having all of those as part of the module and having that in a structured way, I think is really important. We also think of, in sort of the Veeva vision of modular content, is that a module comes without the design around it as well, so that you can use it in different channels and in different ways. So you can, exactly as you said, Julia, you've got this piece of material content, a combination of assets that can be approved and then used in different places. And I think that's where we get to thinking about omni-channel, creating content at scale, and being able to work across channels.
I would like to follow up on that, being able to create content at scale and going omni-channel, because Nataliya had talked a lot about modular is your sort of toolkit on the way to omni-channel. So Nataliya, I would like to bring you into the conversation. What are some of the common pitfalls associated with modular content?
I want to say a couple things into defense of current theory around modular content, because we are all, I think we are all very severely challenging modular content these days. Why we are doing that? Look, if you imagine how we are creating modular content, it's all beginning with the writing, right? So then we are going to the old style of writing, which is hierarchical, which is having this, very subordinated structure. Now we want to come to chunking and cross-referencing and everything about that writing. Then going back to the centuries ago, it took literally centuries to work on printed material in that way we received them right now. And we are merely in decades to have this attitude to web-based material. So I think we are really moving very fast, and we are maybe somewhere we need to go more evolutionary-wise, and expectations are really very high from modular. But I want to bring us in context of omni-channel to the single sourcing theory, right? Because single sourcing theory is the main theory which allowing us everything else, cross-referencing, right? Which allowing us chunking, which allowing us to have the very same approach to printed material and to online material. And going back to the modules, like to creation of the modules, one of the aspects, let's go to the standard approach, we have to make sure we also have them very meaningful. They are either answering the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how, but one module can answer only a single question of that. It's not a multi-purpose. So that means one of the main mistakes where we're going, right? So that we want not to reuse, we want also multi-purpose this module, and we are forgetting about this transformation that the module can answer only one question in a time. Then the types of questions, that's things that
we're going to get to that. We're going to get to those types of questions. I wanted Fabienne to follow up on your thought there a tad bit.
Please.
With Nataliya, that we're sort of, we expect a bit too much from modular content. Fabienne, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, hearing the words like we are all challenging modular content and indeed to the moving very fast. And that is something what we encounter continuously as well. It's not only that we are challenging modular content while we bring it, but we are also challenged on why modular content. And this exactly to all the points that you mentioned, Nataliya, it's this different way of thinking, and indeed this single sourcing theory is really saying, okay, how do I bring my content now in a different way? Or to your point, Emma, bringing content without design. On one hand, you hear also we are marketeers, we are the creative side. So what are we missing? I know we will be touching on the agencies as well, but there as well, we use agencies for designing, creation, and bringing a complete story or bringing the story. So that's also the challenge, is how do I cut my story? Do I need to cut my story? Or how can I bring it in a different way? So these are all the challenges that we encounter at this moment.
Well, let's not
Fabienne,
focus.
if I may
Go ahead.
add, just like this is a very interesting discussion. I'm sorry. So like in terms of challenges, right? So we all like there is like one. I think there are two big concepts. One concept is like the module is completely begins with the design, and the other thing is the module begins with the text. Is we have like the both, you know, the both theories are very valid. That's why I also want to bring our attention, like building modules, we shouldn't undermine the role of the text as a main as a main player in how we bring the content up. Because like centuries we spent on the, teaching everyone to bring up texts in the certain way, right? So, and now we want to make them differently. So we have a lot of software like empowered by AI, empowered by some, you know, conversational interfaces, whatever, which could help us to chop this in the new traditional ways. And maybe we are decades from that chunking.
Emma, would you jump into the discussion there, talking about, you know, the difference of how we approach the content, how we approach the text? Because every time Nataliya was talking about the text, I almost want to say this, the key phrase that we always hear: content is king. No matter what, it's king. Content rules everything. So I want to hear your thoughts on what Nataliya just said.
Is that to me? Yeah.
Yes, that was up to you.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree, and I think it's such a valid and interesting challenge. And what I would say is, when we talk about text, we have to be quite specific. We're talking about key messages, and we're talking about claims. And it's not just about writing, writing text. It's around what is the content trying to do? What is the content? What is the message it's trying to deliver? Because we want to then be able to, really track that all the way through the life cycle, from ideation through to how is it being received in the market? Is it actually delivering, the right information to our customers, the healthcare professionals at that point in time? So yeah, it is text, but it's a special kind of text. And I think that's why it's at the core and the heart of what we're doing.
Yeah, if I may, especially about the innovations, like we are in 2023 and innovations are coming. So like if we are talking about the text and claims and cross-referencing and linkage, so this is where the modern technology will step in. And yes, this where the main role is. Claims are very, very important to make this cross-linkage inside the traditionally written texts even. And then the whole metadata theory is paramount to make sure it is searchable, and this automated breakage and chunking will be possible, right? And I would say we also need to understand types of modules, because we almost buried ourselves today only in the online sources empowered by HTML5, which is still a very strong tool, and HTML5 has a lot of opportunities still. But we can see like there are also, for this modular approach, there are also printed materials are very much used still, right? And training and learning materials are a little bit different from those channels, like traditional channels we are talking about today. And web is playing a specific role.
I'm glad that you mentioned traditional channels. I'm glad that you mentioned the stuff that we're so used to hearing about. And obviously, there's a lot of talk between, the differences between modular content and traditional content. Is there reluctance, and Fabienne, this is going to be a question to you, is there reluctance in terms of brands and companies introducing modular content? And how do you sort of do that with little pushback? So let's talk a little bit about the fact that, we're so used to printed materials and they're not going away anywhere, but we are going the web route nowadays.
Mm-hmm. I think the aspect here is really on these traditional channels, and then the aspect going into omni-channel. Yeah, because in the end, and I know I'm a couple of years already in the industry, but in fact, multi-channel has always been there. So we always have had different channels. The huge chunk of change, in fact, is here that a lot became digital. And with that possibility also to connect people and to connect content across then also different channels for a specific customer. And I think that is where, in fact, the challenge is also coming from, is on one hand, okay, moving very fast from a customer demand perspective, yeah, moving very, very fast from the different channels and the digital, I would say, innovation that is there. And on the other hand, trying to catch up and to say, okay, how can I bring now my content in a more consistent way? And this is not anymore with big chunks of materials, which eventually went better into a traditional channel than now in these digital channels. It are smaller pieces, it are fast pieces, it are connecting pieces. And that is a complete different way of thinking. And that's in fact the biggest, I would say, reluctancy. It's not so much the modular content, but it's the change of way of working and way of thinking. And that's the interesting bit in it, in fact.
Absolutely, the reluctancy to sort of change your approaches, right? I would like to ask an audience question right now. I feel like it's very fitting into the conversation. How do you address the need to review content within the context of the channel and the surrounding content? Who's going to take that one? Emma, perhaps you.
You're going to have to repeat it for me. Sorry, I thought that was a question for the audience.
It's from the audience. It's
Okay.
from the audience. How do you address? We're going to get to the audience questions later on, but they just sort of popped up. How do you address the need to review content within the context of the channel and the surrounding content?
Yeah, well, I think we can't get away from the fact that all content at the end needs its final approval. As regulations state right now, it needs to have that. So all content at the end will go through that final sort of context approval. But when we think about modular content, I think sometimes that word approval can be slightly confusing for people. It's not saying this is approved for use in a market. It's saying that these statements and these things together and these rules that combine them together mean that it gets a sort of status of a validation, or it's approvable to be used in many different places. We also then, to add to that, of course, see that these modules would be combined with channel templates to make sure that they can, you can see how that they would be used when actually pulled into channels as well.
You sort of answer the follow-up question there. Do you recommend any which modules may be used together without additional review, or is there a final form to review? So I think you sort of touched on that without even knowing the questions.
Well, I can see them now as well. So thank you. But yes, I know we've spoken about that a lot, Fabienne, and I know you want to talk a bit about change, Julia, as well. But I will say, I know one of the things Fabienne has done very well is bring those teams along the journey with her. Those that need to review the modules and review and think about how final form will work as well.
I think that's the next question that we would like to sort of talk about is how do you introduce modular content within the company, right? We talked about the reluctancy of change, but how do you actually go about that approach? Perhaps Nataliya, you can take that question, and then Fabienne can follow up as well as Emma.
First of all, I think people will not believe in something they do not see. Right, we can strategize a lot on how to do things, right? So like we absolutely, all of us believe in digital asset management, importance, like in a single source of truth, in the single source in theory, in reusability, in offering to conversational tools, content management tools. We are all believe in ecosystem, but it is really very hard for people to believe in day one without seeing something. And I'm really convinced that even it is sometimes we need to really, we are challenged, because if this budget should be spent from the then why, one to, realize all of that templates, modules, and to build around the brand, the complete, content piece, which is visualizing everything what will happen with this modular approach next. So I believe that this is very true and needed investment from the day one. And that helps, like once we are delivering the template, the module, all the master version for the brand, even in the proof of concept, this is very assuring, I would say, helping people to believe and helping people even to come up with some ideas to how to get it through and synchronize different roles in the company, how to bring that forward, because there is no one, standard way how you can bring modular approach across your organization, because each organization has its own, differences, own strengths, own governance, own rules. So then the products also very peculiar, very different. So that's why we need to visualize things, make sure we can take them and see.
Fabienne,
how do you think we visualize? Sorry.
Go ahead, Emma, go ahead.
Do we
I was
best
gonna ask
visualize
Fabienne,
is that proof of concept sort of making it real in that organization, or do you think there's other things that we can do?
Unfortunately, like for today, it is still a very costly exercise because it is proof of concept. I believe in modern technology. Like within time, we will be able to chop the content, and the technology will be able to visualize for us how your modules, suggested modules will look like, their probability level, what type of the template is suitable from the available pool of templates in the system for every channel, and the templates will be dynamic, and this is the future. So, but to be there, we started very, with the pessimistic note, print industry used hundreds years to be there. So hopefully we will be not using hundreds of years to be there. But right now it is proof of concept, right? And it is a little bit of investment. And tomorrow this proof of concept will help us all together to build a certain technology which will really suggest and will help us to see these modules before we start investing in them.
I think to follow up on Natalia's point, there's actually a comment from the audience saying that Frank is saying that he hasn't seen modular content put to practice really well just yet. It hasn't cascaded down from global to local and been done seamlessly. So Fabienne, I would like to hear your point on that. Are we still in that, sort of very beginning stages of implementing modular content across pharma, across life sciences, and what do we need to do to speed the process up?
I think indeed we are still in this experimenting phase, and that's why we receive so many challenges still along the road. But also to pick up a couple of things that Nataliya, you just mentioned this, it's sometimes also, I would say, a danger to and I use explicitly danger, to think too much, on, okay, this is how the future will be, and this is in fact how artificial intelligence will come. Because the thing is, this is always a wow effect with the people, and the people want to be there already. Now, the thing is, what you also mentioned, Nataliya, is we built the technology. So in fact, if we don't know how it really needs to go, we can't build the technology. And this is the phase where we are in effect. We are really building on what is the best way to go. And they're completely, and we have seen this as well, not believing in something that you don't see, that is not tangible. It's really, really crucial to help, in fact, people faster, and that's in your acceleration question, to faster understand what the module really is, what the module really will bring. Because most of the people, when you talk about modular content, it is like, oh, but yeah, this is our normal way of doing, because we don't have, big volume documents anymore, but we chunk it in chapters. That's not 100% what modular content is. It's also saying, and what Emma was mentioning before, it's starting with a key message. It's starting really to think, what is the message that you want to bring to convince your customer, to change your customer from A to B, for example, to really say, okay, how can I connect again, make it more personalized, and bring it across different touch points? And
so Fabienne, to follow up on that thought, would you say it's about the customer journey here? It's the focus, the main primary focus should be about the customer journey rather than anything else at this moment.
in fact, it's a big piece of it, and like you were saying, the content is king. I'm a big believer of the content is the driver, and the content is where you engage with. And this is also what I saw in this journey. In fact, is really engaging people with you, which will also accelerate the uptake, and also understanding what the demand is outside, so demand of the customer, what indeed modular content can bring, and why we are going into this channel agnostic approach. Because otherwise we stay fixed to our, like you were saying, Nataliya, to our really old printed materials and the big packages that we need to review and I need to see everything. No, it's really to say, how can we be more agile? How can we be faster in the way that we engage with the customer? And if you have your people with you on that journey, which you could call the customer journey as well, but then internally, then you are really a step forward.
Fabienne, you mentioned channel agnostic approach, and there is also a question from Mary in our chat talking about, is there such a thing as being channel agnostic? Because if you think about the copy for email, it's drastically different from a copy that goes to the website or a mobile app. So talk a little bit about, content being appropriate for the channel, right? Appropriate content for the appropriate channel, right content at the right time. Nataliya, you always talk about that. I'd like you to sort of finish that thought.
I wanted to answer the question and continue the talk of Fabienne. I do agree, like the claim and the whole purpose is to make sure we communicate with our customer better. We are focusing on the claim and we are focusing on the key message, but the other aspect of modular is rather very technical one, reusability, right? To make sure we are building this reusable structure, and this is touching the point of being channel agnostic, the whole essence of the module must be very light. So what we have been talking before, we even go for the claim or the message, right? So we still have to understand that the module, even if we take the message to our customer, it answers only one question, not 20 questions, only one particular question. And this is where we are challenged a lot, because we want really, like, we want to take all of our experience and all of our knowledge, and by building the module, we sometimes overcomplicating that module, because to make it reusable, it must be very light. It's like claim, reference, image, and text. So that's very light thing. So, but also answering one particular purpose, then answering this particular purpose, it means it's also designed and created, like, because like we designed that, then we offer in the content offering. I know what I mean, because eWizard is a content offering too. Obviously, we are offering that for the channel. And if the construction of the module is light, is wired by HTML5, it just, what is changing by the channel is only look and feel of this module, because the channel template actually will change the look and feel, but all the purpose will remain the same. But if we will put multi-purpose in the same module, it will kill this reusability effect. So that we must be cautious about the light construction. Then the agnostic agnostivity, or like module will be agnostic. So to the channels, because channels, they have the template, we can put some rules into these templates, and it just will change look and feel of the module, but will not change the purpose. Emma, what do you think?
Okay. Yes, I agree, but I do know that it's an area of much debate. There are probably other webinars going on discussing this, perhaps different viewpoints even. Yes, there are different approaches and different organizations. I think it depends on where the organization is going, what the objective that they're really trying to solve for happens to be. And I think whether is the intention, by that I mean, is the intention about creating global content and global modules and content that can be reused across many markets? Or is it primarily about that personalization and thinking, you know, being able to have more variable content, which perhaps drives people to having more complex modules? I think probably all answers are possible. And, you know, we need to, we're doing building technology that will enable different scenarios. But I also do want to have a, you know, a strong point of view on what works best. And my view right now, and what I'm seeing, is that simplicity is the right answer. For it to be adoptable, for it to work, and for us to see the results that I think your teams, for example, Fabienne, need to see across the organization. That is how we get started. That's how we make things work right now.
Emma, I'll follow up on that thought. Can you share any sort of insights in terms of how to track the effectiveness of content, how to measure the effectiveness of, you know, you mentioned whether the goal is to be on a global scale or more personalized. How do you measure that, and how do you utilize it across different channel types? Just talk a little bit about that aspect.
There's probably a few different ways to answer that. I think, you know, if we're thinking about the effectiveness of modular content and what we measure, it's perhaps slightly different to thinking about the effectiveness of the content. Because I think effectiveness of the content is actually just one measure that shows success of modular content. Could argue it's the number one measure, but I think it's the hardest one to really show the value of right now within organizations. So I think starting off, it's, you know, looking at things like, you know, adoption. Is this happening in the organization? Are we driving the change? Are people creating the modules? And then are they using those modules? That sort of utilization piece. And then I think we get to more effectiveness. And yes, it's using technology to drive, you know, traceability through and being able to track how that content is then used in the market. But if people are just relying on that as the measure right now, they're not going to be able to, I think, drive the change in their organization. They have to, you know, people like Fabienne are, you know, really showing in their organization, this is the vision of where we want to get to. And by doing that, they will be able to see that effectiveness down the line. That's my view.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I would like to bring in here is in general, because everybody likes to see measurements. Me as well. I'm very impatient to see numbers. However, we are talking about content. And content is quality. So it's a different measure you need to look at, not just numbers, not just clicks. For content, you need to go away for that. And that is each organization that needs to define for themselves what's the performance or what good looks like for them when you talk about content performance or efficiency.
Is there an emotional aspect there when you're talking about content and the sort of the emotion it invokes, right? When it comes to the pieces of content and the text, I'd sort of like to follow up on that. But we talked a lot about modular. We talked a lot about all of you have mentioned this, but we haven't really addressed it. Can modular influence the MLR review or MLR approval? I would like to talk about that, and Fabienne, start with you, because I know that's a hard question for a lot of our audiences here today.
I think it will be, or it influences or impacts as much the MLR as the creation of content effect. In that way that, well, first of all, you need to get these stakeholders as close as possible with you in your journey for modular content. And really understanding also the needs of, you know, the customer outside and why we are going into this direction. And with that, in fact, also why we are going into, indeed, this, what Nataliya was saying, also this reuse of content and this reuse of content across the different channels. And I think we are all living in the same world, and we are all, you know, experiencing ourselves on how this works, not specifically in pharma as an example, but okay, take Amazon, take Netflix, whatever, yeah, what people best know. And that is in the end also what, from a pharma industry and from the MLR piece, is eventually the most difficult piece to understand. And you can go into a channel agnostic way, you can go into a modular content approval by staying fully compliant. And that is somewhere the understanding, and I think it was Emma who was saying it beforehand as well. a module is always approved for use in a final material. And that final material will always get the final approval. And that is somewhere the way and the influence and the impact, in fact, on the MLR piece.
Emma, do you want to jump into the conversation, or Fabienne pretty much covered it all in terms of
Oh,
MLR?
she did, but I have to say something. I think anybody who knows me knows how long I've worked in this MLR space, and it's really important to me. I do see modular content, where I sort of talked about, well, back to maybe Nataliya's point, centuries ago, not that long ago, really, we were working on paper. And then, I was fortunate enough to be part of the opportunity to move that into the cloud and do it online. But it still replicated the old way of working, but put it online. This is now the biggest transformation, I feel, to MLR in the industry. And it's about putting the information in the hands of the reviewers to help them make decisions. So I think there'll be more automation that it'll be able to bring to that decision making. It'll never, in my view, replace the need for that human eye and human touch. This is such an important part of what we do, the compliance, making sure the patient safety is front of mind. So that will never go away. But if it can help with the decision making and help with some automation, it'll enable us to be able to create more content more quickly without overburdening already very burdened MLR system, let's say.
I knew I wanted to pose that question to you. Nataliya, what are your thoughts on accelerating MLR with modular content?
I'm admiring what Emma and the team are doing on automation, and how this, especially like how this claims linking is working today. What is really helping us to start with all the modules pre-approval and the provability in theory, right? Will help to challenge all the scope of work, because there are a lot of voices that the MLR scope of work will be only growing once the modular approach will be totally implemented, right? But my voice is for automation, and we are witnessing this automation right now, right here. We can see how little by little we are already can have a part of this automation, then references are just linked, and the things are already ready to be reviewed and understood. And then we have these highlights for what was approved before. And then I think the next thing we will have, before we push to the final approval, we will have some more automated checks on grammar, on rules, on indications, something which is repeatable, so we will be able to eliminate more and more repeatable work, and I think that will be very helpful. So there is nothing but admiration from my side in this very nice work.
Fabienne, you mentioned that in the very beginning of our chat, the agency's role. And I would like to bring that up and talk about, our industry does rely heavily on the agencies and for content creation for different aspects. So talk a little bit about where we are, how can we get up to speed? And I will follow up with Emma and Nataliya on that point.
Yeah, it's interesting to see effect on, how fast indeed within the pharma industry we are moving forward. And this is also, I would say, an impact that is driven by agencies, as you say, because most of the time we are working with agencies indeed. However, and that's indeed the question to the rest of the panel here, is how can we also, or at your end rather, accelerate this uptake and the support effect on modular content from the agency side, because that is really at the moment a weakness still that we feel, to go faster as well on the uptake.
Speed things up, absolutely. Yeah. Nataliya, would you like to follow up on Fabienne's question Yeah, give us
I want to already give compliments to Fabienne, because she's doing a very great job in multi-vendor environment, creating this environment. So this is how, like, this is where acceleration is happening. So there shouldn't be a one supply of everything. So this is the how you drive all the speed. It's how you orchestrate the collaboration of your partners. So, and this is where the acceleration begins, because once you accelerate the synchronization between your partners, between the different pieces of the software, innovation, expertise, and this is the biggest challenge actually, and a very serious and full-time job, because you're just not dealing with separate people. There are separate experiences. They somehow were worked isolated, like on their own. So, but you need to bring them together and to make sure they are working for acceleration of your idea. So this is the best accelerator I haven't seen. Like, it's multi-vendor environment, all vendors working together.
So would you say multi-vendor environment is the key to successful implementation?
One of the keys.
What are the other ones?
Then the disruption. So we have, like, first of all, we have to have all the players. So with the different skill set and different understanding them together, then we have to look for something which will disrupt and the mindset we have, and will create this flexibility, because we need to understand where the technology is today. So that's, we need to bring some disruption, not just immediately into, you know, IT environment, but somewhere in the room, just to make sure, like, the technology and the society and everyone is looking into that direction. So everything in that direction, trendy, modern, need to be used. Everyone is there. So then we have all the vendors, when we have bits and pieces of our theory working together, and there is the future. So then we have the second element over there. And of course, we will need money, because, like, we haven't automated yet. We're building. When you are building the house, the biggest money you spend on all this construction. So we need resources. So we're talking about people, we're talking about technology. Now we need, of course, we do need some resources, so which is very fair, as we're building.
Can I add to that point as well?
And open mind for cooperation.
Because one thing maybe the audience may not always appreciate is that at Veeva there's an agency program that is designed to support the agencies. So there's over 750 agencies globally that are part of it. The reason for mentioning that is the role of what Veeva does is they educate those agencies, make sure they've got all the tools, they know how to use the technology. The aim is to take away the burden from Fabienne and Fabienne's peers in the industry. And so we also have a team there that, know these agencies, knows which ones they are, and, a resource for, organizations in the industry can help them as well, I think. But the other point I would add is often agencies are quite easy to maybe blame for this isn't working, and they're, behind, and they're not falling in line, and that, all of that sort of negativity, and often when they're not there in the room. So to put the positive, I always want to have a positive spin on things, because we do have we have an agency opinion leader group that my colleague Stacey Payne runs. And if anyone wants to know anything more about it, then get in touch with Stacey. She'd love to tell you. But it's global leaders from across the agencies, and they are very much behind how to do this. They're very much behind this is the way forward. Now they are the leaders in the agencies, so they'll be very similar to your approach, Nataliya, that this is the way forward, this is the future. And, perhaps when you get to the ground level, it's not always the case, but, the intention is right. The agencies want to work in this way. So I think it's up to us then to call out when it's not working, because, the leaders want it to happen, got the tools, they've got the, the education to make it happen as well. So probably lots to do, but I think the foundations are there.
Mm.
If I may mention, like, this is the recap of what we were talking, like, proof of concept is the right approach, right? Yeah. And if we go to the essence of the meaning, what proof of concept is, right? So is it a pilot? Is it MVP? No, it's proof of concept. So, and we are building, right? And proof of concept is the method how we build the basics, like how we fix our content, how we fix our teams, how we fix our people. So to understand, they are understanding how to build. And if we go to the meaning of this proof of concept, we need to generate the results, not in the way as we generate from the project, where we need to have like the complete project as like final deadline. Yes, there is a deadline, but it is a proof of concept. So we need to prove several concepts, take the most viable ones, no blame, because if something failing, right? So that's then we done proof of concept for that. So we are not failing on the bigger scale. So, and there is no agency to blame. Maybe we need to say thank you to the vendor who just proved that this theory is not working, and this will be not something you will spend time like and a lot of bigger budget on later down the road. So that's my thinking of multi-vendor environment and working in the proof of concept and getting this success in every stage of this proof of concept. So we succeeded to eliminate the theory, so not good. This one is good, this one is better. And this is also the result, and we need to appreciate the results of our work. So the appreciation is also needed. Like, do you agree, Eva?
Absolutely. We have to appreciate each other. And you all have mentioned how Fabienne has done an excellent job at working in a multi-vendor environment with a multi-vendor environment. Fabienne, I would like to ask you a question, because you do have that experience working with multiple vendors, because you do have experience working with agencies. I would like your take in terms of what is the main challenge when it comes to content, when it comes to working with an agency on content. What do you think perhaps are the top 3 main challenges from a customer's perspective?
I think one big piece, and that is not on the agency or on the vendor side, but that is on the client side, is to have the right and a clear briefing. Because as long as you don't have this, and to Emma's point, you can always blame the other side, because from the start there was something that was not clear. Yeah. So that is one piece that is very, very important for me, that it is working. And while Nataliya, while you were speaking, I was thinking, were we ever in a situation where and the client and the vendor and the customer was in a situation of learning by doing and learning by experience and trying indeed to course correct as fast as possible? Because indeed we are at the moment in the situation of we go for modular content. Everybody knows that's the way to go, but everybody is trying what is the best way to have this way forward on all levels, and on agency level and on client level and customer as well, because okay, they want omni-channel, but what does this really mean for some? Yeah. And I think that is where we really need to hold together, and I think if we all have a mindset of let's try, let experience and learn by going forward, we will make it. Yeah. And I think that's an important piece as well when it comes indeed to content and to get it right. Yeah. And to get the right people on board, like Nataliya, like you were saying, it's and on the client side and on the agency side to have the right people around the call, and not having then people who were used to printed material when we need to talk about the digital omni-channel approach. And this is also the evolution that we need to have, because sometimes we are so used to work with somebody, but maybe in this situation, this time it's not the person anymore to continue with. Yeah. So and that's then to have the best I think also learning again of keeping these people involved and with us. Yeah. But on the other hand, also having more and more experts around the table.
And we shouldn't be scared of adding or changing the experts, because each time when we are learning by doing, we are at different time of evolution. And if we begin with some setup, so that doesn't mean like we're evolving, we are not changing, right? We are adding all the time. It's good like we are adding, maybe sometimes even replacing, but we are evolving, and this is not a bad thing to do, because what I can see, you know, like all of our people are working together. We are. I love this word, community. We are quite a close community, and latest Veeva Summit was showing us a lot how like people are connected with each other. They may be working on different subjects and maybe in different companies already, but they are really connected and they are open to share the experiences. And I met this already twice this year, like when we have one customer who is willing to share with another customer also of ours some experience, because we are learning by doing, and this is on very technical field where we try to do in decades something what other generations done in hundreds of years. So that's why people are willing to share. That's why this round table where we really adding the expertise needs to be very broad and big.
Well, as long as it's not too big of a table. But I do want to follow up. There is a question. Is there a concept like A/B testing for modular content? Are there any sort of parameters to test the effectiveness? Emma, you touched on the effectiveness of content earlier today, but because Nataliya had mentioned that, you know, learning by doing, is there anything that sort of lets you proof your concept? A little bit of a play on words there.
I think when your modules are used in materials, then your content journey is done, or your modular journey is done. And that's the first thing that it works, and your content works and the setup works. So that would be for me, you know, first, and then you have, of course, all the possible parameters that you can bring in. But this is indeed something that is helping.
Absolutely.
Even the number of modules created by the users afterwards, right? The reused material, yes. And then if we set up the how to, right, this modular map, everything correctly. So, and we, as a result, have these modules exactly created by the users. That's also bringing up our chances and bringing up our success level, I think.
Emma, we talked a little bit about automation in the beginning and during the conversation. And as we go towards the end of the webinar, we always want to look ahead to the future. And there's a lot of talk about AI, automation, and a lot of people don't really understand the difference, or a lot of people think it's one and the same, but it's not. I would like to talk a little bit about automation as it stands within the modular content approach.
Yes. Okay. Well, modular content. Yeah. Modular content. It enables a lot of automation. And there is a place for AI, absolutely. I mean, it's very exciting. Everyone wants to have AI on in plans and what they're doing. But when we can think about that a lot as we think about the future. But I genuinely feel, what I see already happening in this year is that I think 2003 is the year for making sure that automation is helping people to move faster. I mean, AI requires huge amounts of data and volumes of data, needs to get things right. Automation is the things that can make an impact right now. And I think automation is this year. Get that right. And AI is going to help, I think, with a lot of things you mentioned, Nataliya, where, some of the manual processes, grammar checking, black triangles for the UK, for example, size of X's, whatever it happens to be from whichever code of practice or regulations. But yeah, where the biggest impact will be is automation, I feel.
Now that we are about 5 minutes out to the end of the webinar, I would like to ask each of you, where do you foresee modular content within the next few years? I know it's hard to predict. Emma sort of touched on that, saying that, 2023 is the year of automation, but what are your thoughts, Nataliya and Fabienne as well?
I hope and I believe that this will be the regular, usual, traditional way how we create our content at every level, level of text, level of images, level of having a single source of truth, level of tagging, references, publishing, reusing. So it will be like today is something everyone wants to understand. Everyone wants to understand how to scale. There are a lot of challenges. So it would be the biggest shame if all these people effort will be for nothing. So I do not believe that it is for nothing. I believe that it will become a standard. So as much as we will be using even more channels of communication in the future, because even AI today used for different purposes, I think the biggest purpose of AI is creating conversational interfaces of how machine to machine, program to program will be talking in the future. Instead of using API protocols, which we are using today to connect, we have integrators, integrations, a lot of money, a lot of stuff, but just integrate the IT environment. I believe that will be the biggest purpose of this conversational protocol to become the protocol of, of standard. And then our modular content will be the standard way how we create content. So there is no other way.
Fabienne, what do you think? Is there any other way?
No, I very much agree with that. For us as well, it's modular content by default. It is somewhere that's somewhere the purpose we would go for, with the changing world we have with our small chunks of informations to share. And yep, that's very much aligned with what you said, Nataliya.
Yeah, here we are. Brave new modern world.
Absolutely. And it's a good thing to sort of sum things up in terms of our conversation. There were a lot of questions from the audience. And if we didn't get to all of them, we will try to do a follow-up with our speakers and perhaps host another follow-up webinar in the near future. But I think we can definitely address many of the questions a tad bit later on. There is a question talking about AI and how do you replace integrators essentially becoming smart lookup robots to mix and match? Nataliya, that's a question to you from Frank. But imagine if you cannot trust the AI. What do you think? We're going to end on that note, I think, in terms of trusting the AI. Can you really trust them in our industry, especially?
Dear Frank, I don't trust today the AI. No one is, actually. And this was Fabienne, who was talking like earlier, that to start trust, we have to build the technology to start trust it, right? And to build these interfaces, like token interfaces, it's a big change management we were not able to talk today about. It's like we need to change the processes inside of how we are doing things. So we will invent the whole new roles like this will be not the architecture of platforms, there will be the architecture of the conversations of how machine to machine is working. There will be the not business analyst, there will be the conversation analyst. So we need to create the whole bunch of new human roles which will help us to build this technology and obtain trust to AI. And we're now on our way to build it. Emma, what do you think? Because you are smiling and I want to think like you have this something to say here.
No, I'm thinking I see Frank agreeing with you. That's why I'm smiling. So it's nice to see that audience
prompt engineers, as Frank said. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Emma, thank you for joining us. Fabienne, thank you for joining us. Nataliya as well. I think this definitely calls for a follow-up session. So stay tuned, everybody. I think there will be a second webinar coming in the near future. Thank you so much. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Bye. Nice weekend. Bye.